Okay, I'm going to call to order the Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District February board meeting. First.
Hello, come in.
Hello.
Oh.
There you go.
Yes, yep, if you want to sign in there on the
Oh,
sheets.
sure, thank you. Perfect. So to start, can we have an approval of the agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Perfect. Moving forward to our third agenda, we have some recognition for a very important member of this board. I believe today is her official last board meeting. And after talking with Tina, who better to introduce her than this beautiful video?
Yes, so this was a video that was played at our Watershed Excellence Award when Pam was given the Roger Lake Stewardship Award. And so I thought I'd play it. It's about 3 minutes. Play it real quick, and then we have a visitor here as well that would like to speak.
I was actually an undergrad.
Pam, thanks for your 30+ years of service. You've done an amazing job in the Watershed District over the years. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam, for all your service. We're gonna miss you and your passion and love for the work. Hi, Pam. You will be deeply missed on the board. We appreciate all your years of service. You are truly an inspiration.
And Pam, thanks for your 30 years of service. Thank you, Pam, for your dedication and for your service. Thank you, Pam, for your service.
Thank you, Pam. You will be missed greatly.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Pam.
And Pam, thanks for all the hard work over the years.
Thank you, Pam, for 30 years of service on the Ramsey-Washington board. Thank you, Pam, for so many years of service.
Pam, thank you so much for all your dedication and knowledge and energy contributing to our watershed over the last 30 years.
Thank you so much, Pam, for your 30 years of service to the Watershed District. You are an inspiration and you've been a role model for me throughout that time.
Oh. Yeah, it got me the second time too.
Thank you for that.
All
Last window. Okay.
Wonderful. Should we invite Stan? to
Yeah.
Say some words?
Yes.
30 years, that's amazing.
Yeah.
We've both been residents of Oakdale. I think we knew each other a little bit way back. In the
Way
day.
back in the day.
I'm sure if you live in the same home, you're
Well,
not
still live in the
that
same.
far away from each other. And first of all, if this is my 8th year on the county board, so I apologize where you've been on there 30 years. It's coming to meetings like a acquaintance, but first of all, I want to thank the watershed district for everything you do at the county level. I was elected locally. We do the watershed, but our city handles so much of it. We had a really good city of Oakdale, and I think they work well with the watershed districts. But we get a lot more oversight on water management. Get to learn more about the watershed district, so really appreciate everything you do. And since Pam's been our, not that you want some geographic balance, so I think about 20% of the districts in Washington County, you have a 5-member board. So it is nice to have one from Washington County and have some geographical balance, so I think Stephanie Wang will be great. But anyhow, Pam, for 30, Dr. Pamela Skinner, that's amazing. We have a commissioner award. We really don't give them out uniquely when somebody's really done something great in the community. And this is something they've been doing for a lot of years, but this one is Commissioner Service Award for Washington County. On behalf of a grateful county, the undersigned Commissioner Stan Karwoski hereby extend recognition and appreciation to the Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District Manager Pamela Skinner for 30 years of outstanding service in support of Washington County's mission. Thank you, Pam. Amazing, 30 years, that's just amazing. I won't, if you don't mind, I'll stay a little bit of the meeting.
Yeah.
But I'll, won't see that much longer, but, yeah, appreciate the work you're doing. Amazing, 30 years is just amazing.
Thank you.
Are we gonna get an opportunity to gush on you after the meeting? Do I have to- Well, I think the staff, you guys have brought a sweet treat.
Yes.
If during the meeting you guys need a refreshment.
Special cake first day, so help yourself, everybody, as you have a chance.
Oh, Pam, no, I have a lot to say, but I'm going to share it after the meeting. Thank you so much. I'm gonna, if this is okay, do you mind? I know Larry knew Pam for a while. Did you want to say anything, Larry? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, you can just say something. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Yeah, we
that's-
love that.
All right, great. Well, I just came because Pam, it's been so much fun working with you. I've learned a lot. But the main thing that I want to bring across is you are the funnest person to travel with.
Right back at you, Larry.
One of the things we found out when Pam and I ended up at a conference together is we're both super introverts. In other words, given the opportunity, we'll sit in our hotel room, watch television rather than go out. And when we found each other and got out and started to talk with other people because we were both there and talk to each other when we were traveling and things like that, I not only learned a lot, but I had a lot of fun, and I really appreciate that. I also found somebody who could drink way more beer than I could, which is a wonderful thing for me. But I've learned a lot. Cliff articulated a lot of the things that I would say about my interaction with you. We haven't always agreed with everything, but we've always learned and moved ahead and gotten things done, and I really appreciate that. As long as I'm standing here talking right now, I'm also going to use this as my visitor comment so that I can move to. And that is that I think I would like to challenge the board to think about naming awards after Cliff Eichinger and Pam Skinner, because both of those have been integral to what the watershed district is today. Absolutely integral. And I know I brought this up before, floated the idea. I don't know if it's gone anywhere or not. I'm gonna stand up here and say, I think it ought to be done, because giving you an award is a fine thing. We'll put it up on the wall, mine are all in the garage. But, you know, that's an okay thing, it's a one-time deal. It fades away. But I know we have the Roger Lake Award for the same week. You have the Roger Lake Award for the same thing. I would challenge you to look at Pam and Cliff as two people who have been so important to the development of this watershed, and have a way to recognize them every single year for the people that participate in this. So Pam, it's been great. I'm gonna miss having you on the board, even though I'm not on the board anymore. And I know you're doing a lot of great things, and we'll have a great life. But thank you for all the things that you've done for me. Diane also sends her best wishes. She's out in San Francisco right now enjoying the weather. So otherwise she would be here with me tonight. So thank you, and best future.
Thank you, Larry. Appreciate it.
That's awesome, Larry. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to mention Cliff, so I knew him a while back, but he's, the brother-in-law, to my immediate neighbor.
Oh. Yes.
I got another
He's smart
story.
girl, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Keep up the good work, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, afterwards, we're still having a conversation.
Now we're ready to dive in.
So let's go ahead and dive in. We're gonna go to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Hi, Larry, thank you.
Second.
Any further any further discussion? Okay. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Alright. Consent agenda. Moving forward to visitor comments, we have a full house. I apologize, sir, I don't recognize you. You mind introducing yourself? Are you visiting, and would you like to?
No, I don't have. My name is Joe Bester with the Lake Owasso Association.
Oh,
Paul and I have been working with the organization on Fort Hill project, but I just came to really observe.
Okay.
I don't know how many times I have made to our lake residents, board members, Wednesday nights, 6:30, first Wednesday of every month, come here to, keep in touch and understand what's going on. Seldom does that happen. So anyway, I'm here tonight, kind of, bluntly brought on by our current project on Fort Hill. But anyway, I'm just here as an observer, so.
perfect.
But I do cut and paste a whole lot of stuff out of the website, and I always credit the watershed district onto our webpage, so people know what's going on with CARP, what's going on with all the restoration projects on the shore.
Thank you so much. Okay, I think everyone else is not a visitor. I'm gonna go ahead and continue. Moving to the permit programs.
Good evening. The 3 permits, requesting approval tonight were, included on the consent agenda. I do have the enforcement action report. We did approve a staff approval of a, single lot residential project, and I included the cover sheet and map, at the end of the report, just for your information. This was for those board members that weren't here at the time, this was an effort that we worked on a number of years ago to help streamline permitting for these really small shoreline projects that trigger our floodplain rules. So we don't get a lot of them, but we did in January. And then an update on the Rooney subdivision, that I was working with Tracy on last month. Mary's been out to the site inspecting, and we've had a lot of ongoing communication with the original owner developer, who has indicated that he's going to continue the project. So they have implemented some improvements regarding erosion and sediment control on the site. We're still waiting on some confirmation of, we're trying to get them to have a trained inspector of their own, because that's a state requirement that they're doing their own inspections as well. So we provided them with resources if they need to hire a consultant to do that, or train themselves, they can do it. And then the matter of the permanent filtration basin is still kind of under review. It's in a temporary state, it's only half complete, so it will be turned over to the city of Oakdale at the end of the project, so we anticipate working further with the developer and also the city to make sure that someone finishes it. But it's stabilized right now, and there's not a concern for any offsite discharge because of that. Also kind of a unusual.
Can I ask a question about that before you jump? So
Yeah.
no cease and desist, so that's a good
Correct.
thing, you're working through it.
Kept claiming he was on it and he was responding.
Okay.
So,
And the last conversations that we've had around it, we didn't know where the inspection reports were going. We know where that goes now. Is that a fair conclusion?
Yeah, the owner has a new email address, so he's getting them, and there's a couple other players involved that are getting the inspection reports. And a builder, I believe, is doing the maintenance. Yeah, there's a whole team of folks that get our reports, and we copy the city of Wiper Lake on those as well. And Wiper Lake does their own building inspections. So yeah,
So continue to monitor, but things are moving along.
yes.
Thank you.
Lastly, on the enforcement report, we had a wetland violation in the city of Woodbury. We were notified by, actually a employee of Bowser, as he was driving by in the area. So uniquely, the impacts were done by a private resident on city of Woodbury property. I'm not sure if they knew where their property line ended or what their goals were. But it appears that there's been some things going on back there for a while, just based on the aerial photography that I looked at. So we're working through the Wetland Conservation Act enforcement process right now. I've kind of taken it to the point that where the watershed's involved, and then now it's Washington Conservation District and the DNR that will actually issue the restoration order. And that will actually go to the city, because they're the landowner where the impacts occurred, but even though they didn't do it. But they're on board with that because they need that documentation to go to their city council to appropriate a budget for restoring the wetland. And then they'll follow up with seeking payment from the resident after the fact. So I think we're happy that the city's actually doing it, because they'll hire someone that can do it well and restore it properly. So that's where we're at. We're still waiting on that restoration order, and I'm not sure of the timeline yet for the actual completion of the restoration, but.
What is our role looking forward in this particular one, out of curiosity? It sounds like it's now in the city's hands. We don't play further role here?
Yeah, so we outlined kind of from the WACA perspective what we need to see happen because it's a violation of WACA, and then just how the enforcement process works through WACA. Now it's the SWCD, or Washington Conservation District, has to write the restoration order, and the DNR has to deliver it. So it's kind of, I haven't gone through this actually formally ever, so learning a lot as well. But yeah, there's a lot of different agencies with very specific different roles, so.
the resident is learning quick.
Yeah.
Well, two quick questions.
Yeah.
Just looking at the one photo, It's not clear whether or not, is this a public water? Is one question.
It is not.
And the second question, do we know at this point, is the resident apparently cooperating?
I don't know that because, the city, since it's their property, they sent the cease and desist, and so their attorney is, communicating directly with the resident. But, we actually, I think just today, the city was looking for that restoration order, so that they can bring it to their council hopefully next month. But I'm not aware of exactly the communication going on between the city and the resident.
Understood. Thanks.
You're just gonna keep tabs.
Yeah. Make sure it gets done and then maybe do an inspection after the fact and make sure it gets established with the native seed that they put down.
You were saying this has been going on for a while due to aerial photography. How do they determine the historic extents of that wetland, like how far the restoration has taken place? I mean, is there an agency in charge of doing like soil sampling and figuring out what those soils end?
We just estimated, I mean, myself and Bowser estimated the fill extents based on a review of historical photos from at least 5 years back, because they have seasonal photos available, so. And then we could have looked at older ones too, but, yeah, it looks like it was an estimation,
Yeah.
but. And we estimated the square footage of impacts. Yeah, the actual excavation, usually you don't see that as an impact, it's more like fill and dumping and stuff. So Bowser, is gonna basically leave it up to the city if they want to, restore exactly to existing conditions. They can leave some of the excavation area, but they have to remove that fill berm for sure, and then grade it so that it's a more gentle slope. But that will be up to the city. We're more concerned with getting the fill out.
I was thinking that not to persecute an individual, but to educate the community, this might be a good story, you know, that doesn't maybe name any names, but just says, this is what happened and here's what the consequence was. And just so you know, if you do this, you'll have to pay for the restoration of the wetland you fill.
I share Pam's thoughts.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
It makes me curious how many people do this not knowing.
No, yeah.
I'm sure you guys know, but this is a pretty serious offense.
I'm sure we don't know when it goes on all the time.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, it's usually, and we've come across smaller situations and the
Yeah.
landowner will be apologetic, they'll remove it on their own, you know, we don't have to go through all the steps because it's
Mhm.
smaller. That's not uncommon. But this extends.
Yeah.
Being as there's already a project that's gonna happen here, is there any, have you considered partnering with the city to enhance that wetland or make any other beneficial modifications through the process?
I had not considered that. It's right adjacent to 494. It's pretty like heavily cattail.
Okay.
So I don't know what the likelihood of success, and it's not really accessible to the public because it's
Okay.
literally between 494 and Midnight right of way, and then these private properties. So, yeah, I'd have to think about that more, but it wasn't something I considered, and Bowser didn't bring it up as a idea either. But yeah, maybe I could work with Lauren on a newsletter, social media post about what not to do in wetland areas, or if you don't know if you have a wetland in your backyard, or if you don't know where your backyard ends, I guess that's another thing to figure out. But yeah, and this is pretty unique, the extent of the impact. The resident had actually his own construction equipment in his backyard, so not everyone can make this big of a change, thankfully, but yeah.
Still a unique lesson learned for sure.
Yeah.
I just have one question on the staff approved one, no problems with it. I was curious in your conversations, did you also introduce some potential grants for shoreland restoration, et cetera, et cetera?
I believe Paige would have during the Snail Lake shoreline outreach, because I think I saw that each neighbor on both sides have it.
That boat, yeah.
Yeah, have a restoration.
Yes, I thought you were talking about the wetland one still.
Yeah, no, I'm going, sorry, to Timothy's permit. I just want to make sure that he had considered grants in that particular area. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think he would have been contacted through that effort.
initial things, yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions on the permits? Once approved for the enforcement report? Okay. Let's transition to the stewardship grant program. None, Paige. What
No
does that mean?
applications this month, yeah, February's traditionally pretty quiet, but I thought maybe this year people would start thinking about it earlier, but I did receive a handful of residential habitat restoration requests, so you see those on there, and then a couple maintenance grants came in already, so I'd like to see some more applications as the year goes on.
We just started the street sweeping. Is that with Woodbury, I assume?
Yeah, oh, that good, yeah, that's actually, City of Roseville, so they approached us, we had our public works forum, excuse me, last month. And talked about flood risk reduction with all of our city engineers and public works directors, and then talked about enhanced street sweeping. And summarized the 2023 program and talked about grants available for 2024, so we're expecting to have some larger requests come in. City of Roseville talked to Tina and I after the forum, and they had an opportunity to have a summer intern who's going to focus on diving into their street sweeping program a little bit more and doing a little bit more kind of research into what they do and developing some better programs for them, but they didn't have the full funding to staff that person the way they were hoping, so they requested the $3,000 to go.
And what one of the things that the intern is proposed to do is to develop a monitoring program essentially for street sweeping. So looking at how their collected material is weighed, how it's determined the phosphorus reduction based on the weight. So there's how the efficiency of the sweeping and where they're sweeping, things like that. So yeah, that it was a good test study.
We're hoping to use some of that, I assume.
Yeah, we requested that myself and Mike McKinney from Bar could meet with that person once they're hired on, talk through our study and what the city's hoping to get out of it, and maybe some ideas of that position.
That sounds really like a great opportunity.
Yeah.
Seasonality.
I don't know. I don't think it's been posted yet, but I know Ryan Johnson at the city was thinking like a 3 or 4 month position.
It's usually interns, but it would be nice to kind of early spring, later spring, early summer, and progress
In the fall.
to get that kind of data. But we'll start with where we can.
Any further questions on the stewardship grant program? Oh, man, jump into action items. Elizabeth Holmes.
Yes. So this is for phase 2. You saw phase 1 come in this fall. And that was for constructing a new basin at Roosevelt Homes and then expanding the existing basin for kind of some of the flooding issues that we've seen out there to help with that. So phase 2 is to plant those basins. We didn't want to include that in phase 1. It just kind of limited the, it's kind of more of a specialty contractor we were hoping to get for that part of it. So we were able to thankfully squeeze the construction piece in this fall, or it ended in December. And then now we're looking to hire a contractor for the planting of the basins, as well as that hillside there that you see, I think in some pictures. Yeah, that picture where we're all standing there, looking at that very steep hillside that they currently mow. And they're very excited about the opportunity to have native plantings in there, reduce the need for mowing. We had picked out what we thought was a large area, and then the last time we said, can we make it bigger? So that'll be exciting. Yeah, the hope is to get somebody in there this spring and get that planted. And we worked closely with Roosevelt Homes on the planting plan, plant selection, so that they're comfortable. You know, we'll do maintenance for 2 years and then turn it over to them for maintenance. So.
Well, but I think it's maybe worth noting that this is phase 2 of a 3-phase project.
Yes.
And so there is gonna be one more phase that will come back, and that one is conveyance improvements through their property. And we're working with them because we've got plans to do some improvements to their playground. So to minimize disruptions, we're phasing it. So this is the planting one. There's a third one that you'll see at some point in the future, but
I was gonna ask about the phase 3 as it relates to the spaces currently in phase 2. Do we anticipate an overlap between those two? I just can't recall.
yeah, the way that these phases were set up, it was sequencing the work so that there's no adverse offsite impact. So the first one was making additional volume, increasing the size of the basin. So there's room to put the water somewhere. Phase 2 was really the specialty contractor, the planting, making sure we get the right personnel in there to do that work. Phase 3 is the conveyance. So we're gonna improve, their system to bring that water that's currently in their parking lot, in their maintenance garage, into the basins where we've made space for that water. So that's how they all kind of fit together and the reason why we're doing them in this order.
So question on this phase 2, the planting.
Mhm.
I think we're all aware that planting is something that there's some opportunities for assisting with. And I'm just curious if there's been any thought to trying to reach out to residents, offer them that opportunity. Since it'd be done by a contractor, that might be
Yeah.
a little bit challenging, I recognize
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So we have the Roosevelt Homes staff. They received a very large grant, I think it was a federal grant, for ash tree removal and planting. So they're organizing a planting effort for trees with their residents. So we decided to keep this separate, have the contractors plant it, then the plants are warranted as well. But we will be part of that tree planting event and make sure we're out there when that happens. Have a table and booth and whatnot. And then we've also been helping with, Lauren is working on some communication with them so that we can get the message out to the residents about what we do. And then hopefully, yeah, continue our efforts with, any other programming that they have planned up there.
I think the motion is to advertise for bid.
Here, I got it. I move, the board approve the preliminary design, estimated cost, and proposed project schedule, and direct staff to finalize the design and building documents and solicit bid proposals.
Second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Looking forward for the Woodbury Target advertise for bid.
Yes, so you have also seen this one, I think at about 50% design, not much has changed from that, but looking to do our retrofit at our third and final Target store, which is exciting. This one will install 2 basins in mostly existing green space, and then Target was able to give up 8 parking spaces. This Target is, I don't know if anyone actually goes to this Target or not, but the parking lot is always full, so hard for them to give up other parking here, but those 8 spaces will come out for the construction of the 1 basin. They'll both have iron enhanced trenches in there. You see the engineer opinion of cost range about 775,000 to almost 900,000. So we'll be curious to see where those bids come in. Highlights.
This one's a little unique is for budgeting, because we do have funds in our stormwater impact fund, which is money that we collect through a permitting program for projects that aren't able to complete their stormwater management on site. So then they pay into the fund. We assign those funds to sub watersheds, and the amount of funds we have in this watershed will cover the cost of this project. So that's a grant.
Okay, I'll move the board approve the preliminary design, estimated cost and proposed project schedule and direct staff to finalize the design and bidding documents and solicit bid proposals.
Second. Good discussion? I have one question. So we did budget for this particular one, so since we're covering with the stormwater impact fund, that budget,
We assumed already that we were pulling this from the summer.
thank you for the reminder. Yeah, I couldn't. All in favor, say aye. Tracy. Very well.
The Rooney was kind of the big issue this month. We did put out for bids for next month's meeting, the publication for any vendors to come forward and solicit bids so that the board can make decisions on vendors for next month. And I think Lauren reviewed the fail-in agreement, but otherwise a little calmer than last month. We were- Right, Nicole? Yeah. So, yeah, thanks, so.
Any questions for Tracy? Super happy that you're here.
It's really nice to be here. It's not the same, so I have to say.
Oh, I apologize, extra commentary. So, perfect, if there's no questions for Tracy, board discussion topics, there is one topic that I do want to talk about really quickly. It, I believe, went out in an email from Tina talking about its end of year performance assessment times, and we need to have a closed door meeting, so I wanted to make sure that you guys did receive that email and at least respond to ensure that you're available. I unfortunately will be remote during that week, but I'm very happy to do my best to call in. I think the week is of the 20th, so hopefully y'all responded. Just head nod would be appreciated if y'all have, does it fit within your time frame?
I saw the email, I have not looked ahead to it, I will do that for respond to Tina.
Just as a education, since I think at least two of you, it's the first time to do it. This is a closed door meeting where we do performance assessment. We help set some goals for the following year. So this is just a good time for us to do it. It's just us board and talking things through. Cool.
Just kind of an educational perspective, you can have a closed door meeting because you're talking about the executive director. That's really all that your topic needs to stay to. And then after that meeting, there's a little bit of a summary. It doesn't have to have the personal information. Tina knows this well, but if I'm here, I thought I might as well have that. It's because it's, very rare to have a private meeting with public board members. So it's only for the purpose of the performance review.
Thank you for clarifying the executive director. I always feel weird saying it, but yes.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, in the email, Pam and I are planning to meet next week, and then she'll bring forward to the rest of the board the materials and information review.
And I'm still not getting emails for whatever reasons. Maybe we can just text and tell them.
We'll figure out.
Why change things up?
No, we just discovered that neither one of us were receiving any emails since early January.
Oh, really?
And I was like, are you getting my emails? Are you okay? And apparently she was doing the same, and finally we connected.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I realized that.
But yeah, if you wanna let me know dates, if there's not any that are not available, then I'll connect with Val to see what we can schedule.
Yeah, and I'm very comfortable knowing Pam, that I could send Pam what I need to say and all that kind of stuff, and I think she would represent it appropriately, so. So if it does come down to a scheduling thing, I have a family trip that was planned, we can figure it out. That's the only topic I want to make sure I covered here, so it needs to happen in February, and then next week we go through our process. Okay. Anything else for board discussion points to bring up? New reports and presentations. I'm excited about this Coleman Creek flood risk reduction study. Let's talk.
Yes.
Did you wanna log into the Zoom? So
Yeah,
you
and
could
then I can share the PowerPoint.
Yeah,
Sure.
the link is on our website if you need.
So,
Got it.
okay. Good. Okay, yeah, so for those who haven't met me, I'm Tyler Olson. I'm a water resources engineer at BAR. And I'm going to present the findings from our Coleman Creek flood risk reduction feasibility study. We have prepared a draft report that district staff have reviewed, and then prepared this presentation that summarizes those report findings. And then after this meeting, we'll be finalizing the report, sending it out to partner cities, and then so to give an outline of what we're gonna go over, I'll give a little bit of a project background of where we started and how we got to this study. I'll talk through the different flood risk reduction and design goals that we've set for the different alternatives and conceptual designs that we've developed. And then I'll walk through each of those project alternatives kind of throughout the corridor that we're looking at. And then I'll provide some summary and recommendations based on our modeling and our conceptual design. So to give some background on Coleman Creek, you can see on the screen, these are the past projects that the district has completed within the sub-watershed. So back in the 90s, a new outlet was installed on Casey Lake, which is kind of in the upper portion of the Coleman Creek watershed. And then in 94, the district completed improvements on Target or PCU Pond, which is in North St. Paul, just north of the Target there, where we've also done some green infrastructure improvements. So that included excavation in the pond and then installation of outlets and some other grading. And then as part of that same effort, there were some conveyance improvements that were done under White Bear Avenue that Coleman Creek runs under. And then later in the 90s, the Coleman Basin pipeline was installed, which is Coleman Basin is sort of at the downstream end of where this feasibility study focused on. And then in 2020, as the Beltline resiliency study was completed, the existing extents of flooding throughout this area were identified. So some of those areas are the North St. Paul Urban Ecology Center around PCU Pond, as well as on White Bear Avenue, and then downstream in Markham Pond and in Coleman Basin. And all of this is tributary to the Phelan chain as well. So it's all pretty connected, but this is more of the upper portion of that watershed. And then as part of the resiliency study, potential conceptual projects were identified without diving too much into sort of the cost and benefit and feasibility of construction. So the purpose of this feasibility study was to take that next step and do a little bit more design, do more detailed modeling, and figure out what combination of projects would be necessary to help protect as many structures as possible that are at risk of flooding in this watershed. So looking at the design goals and coming up with those conceptual projects, our main flood risk reduction goal is to remove structures from the 100-year floodplain. So we've identified those structures based on inundation extents from our modeling for the 100-year Atlas 14 event. And then we've confirmed some of the low openings on those structures through the district's emergency response plan efforts, where we've actually surveyed the low openings like window wells or back doors and from walkout basements. Or if we don't have survey data available, we pull those elevations from LiDAR topographic data. So as an estimate of what the low opening would be. And then for specific projects, what our criteria included were reducing freeboard for existing structures for the 100-year event. So if we can't remove them from the floodplain, can we at least give a little bit more freeboard between the 100-year flood elevation and their low home opening? And then we also wanted to limit the 100-year peak discharge rate to existing conditions or lower, which is consistent with the district rules. As we're kind of looking at projects, it's really, can we provide more storage or can we provide more conveyance to move water out? And so providing more conveyance, we want to make sure we're not increasing or making things worse downstream by increasing rates.
I have a really quick, just to make sure, when you say reduce freeboard, does that mean just increase the freeboard above the 100-year plane?
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure that I.
That's a good clarification.
Because that, like, since I just wanted to double check. And then on the 100-year floodplain, could you remind us how, so Atlas 14, is that pulled from the FEMA? 100-year flood, I can't recall.
Do you wanna?
You mind helping me?
Yeah, so the way that we're using the 100-year floodplain as defined in the watershed district stormwater model.
Okay.
This is the same model that was submitted. I mean, the model is dynamic, it's updated, and information is identified. For the current FEMA effective maps, the watershed shared information at that time with FEMA for their map updates. And as recently as 2 years ago, we shared our model results again. The DNR was spearheading that effort, so they have those. And so the FEMA inundation areas will continue to be based on information that we share. This model that we're using is more detailed. It's tracking inundation, identifying inundation areas that we've identified, but FEMA doesn't have published on their maps.
That's the thing I wanted to hear. Thank you.
One other quick question on the freeboard. Is there a buffer concept or is that an exact elevation?
It's an exact elevation, but accounting for error within modeling, so we don't include thousands of a foot of elevation.
Sure.
But then district rules require 2 feet of freeboard between the 100-year water surface and the low opening. So we're trying to get as close to that 2 feet as possible.
So there's no horizontal consideration. It's all strictly elevation.
Correct. Yep. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. Good questions. So just a little piece of sort of the methodology that we used to update our model. We collected as-built and other information from the 2 cities that our study area covered. So it's Maplewood and St. Paul. We also performed survey, so bar surveyors went out and took topographic data and also some utility data for critical storm sewer, different pipes and outlets from the storage areas along this corridor. And then we also reviewed city and county CIPs to understand the timing of some of their projects that they have upcoming in this study area and see if we could maximize and be efficient with some of those projects and some of the alternatives that we looked at. And that, spoiler alert, led to the County Road C culvert improvement project being prioritized for this year because they're rehabilitating County Road C at the end of 2024. So we are fast tracking that design. So when we zoom into our study area, these are the extents that we looked at as part of this feasibility study. So the most upstream point is PCU Pond. You can see on the bottom right hand of the screen. McKnight is just to the east, and then the North St. Paul boundary goes to Ariel Street on the west of PCU Pond. And you can see Coleman Creek discharges out of the northwest portion of PCU Pond, flows west into a wetland between Ariel Street and White Bear Avenue, and then continues flowing west under White Bear Avenue into another wetland complex, and then north to Markham Pond, and then eventually to Coleman Basin. And so you can see all the red structures are at risk of flooding during the 100-year, the ones with boxes around them. I know it's a little hard to see on the screen, but those are confirmed based on our topographic survey, whereas the ones without boxes are just based on LiDAR, so there's a little less confidence if those are actually at risk based on our 100-year modeling. And then there is one green home you can see on here, or 2 green homes that we surveyed and are actually higher than the 100-year flood elevation. So those were previously identified as at risk, but are no longer considered at risk based on our survey.
Plus the 2 feet of freeboard.
Those don't necessarily have the 2 feet of freeboard. They just are above the 100-year floodplain elevation. So that's part of our criteria is can we improve that freeboard at all, even though they aren't at risk.
I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Yep.
Cool.
So now I'm going to walk through conceptual projects kind of within 3 different areas along the Coleman Creek stretch in the study area. So the first suite of projects that we looked at is around PCU Pond, where we're trying to lower the inundation that's impacting those homes, that cluster of homes on the north side of 13th Avenue. So the first alternative that we looked at is installing a berm on the northwest side of PCU Pond, and then conducting storm sewer improvements where we're preventing flow from discharging north across 13th Avenue and filling up that low area. And instead, we're collecting drainage on 13th Avenue and then just routing all of that directly into Coleman Creek. And so that's the first conceptual project. You can see the berm location and then those proposed storm sewer alignments. We do have, as part of the report, we have more design and plan sheets for those improvements. And then the second project we looked at is excavating PCU pond to provide additional storage. And so you can see we're proposing excavation kind of across the whole pond extents. And that's, I should say, we have our recommendations bolded for each of these points. So the first project we do recommend pursuing based on the results that we were seeing, which we'll get into in a second. But the second project we do not recommend moving forward. And then the third project we looked at was a large diversion of high flows from PCU Pond down 13th Avenue and into the wetland between Ariel Street and White Bear Avenue, which would be two 60-inch pipes to divert those high flows. And so that's quite extensive and a really big project. And we do not recommend moving forward with that one just based on our modeling results, which I'll show you here. So based on our modeling results of just the first project, we can remove all of the structures that are at risk of flooding on the north side of 13th Avenue. We do increase the water surface elevation in PCU Pond slightly, but that's really local and contained to either the pond parcel itself or public right-of-way along those streets. And so we felt comfortable with that small incremental increase. But you can see as Coleman Creek flows west, we're reducing flood elevations by almost 6 feet and then 4 feet kind of as you step further downstream. So a really impactful project. What we were seeing with the other two alternatives, the excavation was really to try and limit the increase we were seeing in PCU Pond. And we just felt the cost benefit wasn't worth it to have that 0.2 be zero and pay millions of dollars to excavate PCU Pond. And then the same with those twin diversion pipes. They provided similar level of benefit for the structures north of 13th Avenue and in PCU Pond, but the cost really didn't justify implementing those when we can protect these structures with just this one alternative. So yes, we have 7 structures removed from the floodplain here, and I'll step downstream.
Before you jump
Yeah.
on that particular one, what would lead maybe public entities, landowners to not want to pursue number one, out of curiosity? So and here's my basis for the question. As we've looked through some of the program reports and try to interact with landowners, sometimes there is some resistance in trying to execute some of these things. I'm just trying to proactively think through what would prevent somebody from wanting to adopt something like this. It seems very straightforward and simple.
Yeah, so some of the history about this area, we've been in conversations with the city of North St. Paul for really several years, both as part of this study, but also as part of the prior planning work that had been done. And initial concepts looked at trying to coordinate the work with the city street improvement plan, looking at possibilities of raising 13th Avenue. I mean, it was, we talked about some of those big impactful projects, and the feedback that we got from the city was, well, they didn't have any plans to do any improvements on that street. But when we were out there, we were looking at the right of way, they had suggested more of a earth and berm. What can we do off of the street, but adjacent to it? So we're not going on to private residential property. We're trying to stay out of their street. There may be grading changes needed, you know, within their right of way, but they were initially supportive of that grading within the public right of way, but staying off of their street. So we've had a lot of those coordinating discussions, in this case with the city, not with private entities that I'm sure we'll talk about later.
We will definitely talk about it.
But this is all under public ownership.
Yeah,
That's what I.
that's the
make
difference.
sure.
A related question. You see the 0.2 feet, that's elevation difference on within the pond. Does that equate to the height of the berm? I'm wondering from kind of Val's question, is an aesthetic, you know, if something, if it's big, you know, how high high is this thing gonna be?
Yeah, the berm is, I believe it's only about 3 feet high, so it's not, very large and kind of aesthetically impactful on the north side of the pond, and that berm elevation that we've set in our preliminary design, accounts for that 0.2 foot increase, so, yeah, we're not proposing an 8 foot berm on the north side there, really manageable and typical 3-to-1 side slopes, and all can fit within the shoulder and the right of way of that 13th Avenue. And that'll be something that we fine tune in final design, is making sure that our proposed grading extents fit, and we can achieve that and get city buy-in on what the aesthetics look like and plantings and all that sort of stuff.
I think that's up, Pam.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Don't we, because we built PCU pond, don't we have to routinely go in there and clean out all the sediment anyways? But that's just cleaning it out to its original, and what you would be proposing is digging it out deeper?
And I guess more surface area to provide live storage for flooding above the normal water level. So more of the upland grading as well.
What we learned and what everyone, I guess we knew was, we were looking at adding storage on the north side of the pond, but that was where there had been a historic dump in the past. And so the cost for excavating this particular pond in the particular area where we needed storage was not cost effective. And so we were looking at going above and beyond typical routine maintenance and stuff.
One terminology clarification to add, when we say recommended versus not recommended, that's a cost benefit ratio. Recommended versus not recommended, or are there other elements considered?
Well, there's both. I mean, cost is a big driver to it.
Oh, yeah,
In this case, when you start getting into the pond, there's environmental concerns that would need to be mitigated, so.
So the recommendation's a multi-factor.
It is. There's a difference here between like the work that we did in the resiliency study, where we're looking at big projects, trying order of magnitude, what would it take? With these feasibility studies, we're trying to drive into what would it take to remove it, but what would also be responsible for use of public dollars. And so we're trying not to, we can limit it to not showing these over the top projects that provide a very minimal benefit. That's what we're trying to account for in these feasibility studies.
Very cool.
No, all good questions. Feel free to jump in too if you have more moving forward. Let me, go the other way here. So moving west, we don't have any proposed projects on this wetland, but we just wanted to highlight a couple of things here. We did look at alternatives to remove these two structures that are impacted along this wetland. And the low entry elevations are much lower than the 100-year, whereas some of the other structures we've been looking at, they've been within a couple tenths of a foot or maybe within a foot. These structures are greater than a foot, sometimes several feet below the 100-year floodplain. And so significant improvements would be required to remove those and protect those structures. So we looked at increasing wetland storage, which has a whole slew of permitting complications and other environmental considerations that we'd have to think about. And then we also looked at increasing discharge even more under White Bear Avenue, as was proposed in 1994 when those improvements were made. And that would be significant as well. And then we'd really just be moving the problem to the next wetland downstream. And so, yeah, in our evaluation, in our multifaceted kind of comparison of all the alternatives, we aren't recommending any improvements along this wetland at this point. But we are increasing the freeboard that these two structures have because we're reducing the flood elevation here by a couple tenths of a foot. And what we're really seeing is that this wetland elevation is tied to the control that's happening downstream under County Road C. And so as much as we can do there, it is benefiting here, but adding tons and tons of capacity under White Bear Avenue really isn't going to help unless we add a ton of capacity downstream. But then we get into increasing 100-year discharge and moving the volume into Coleman Basin and beyond. So so that's where this area landed. I don't know if anyone has any immediate questions
What
here.
was the risk at the 10 and 50-year flood marks for these structures? Like how under the 100-year really are they?
That is a great question, and that is what we are adding to the feasibility study. That, basically it's, right now, we're looking at it through the lens of the 100-year floodplain. That's kind of the maximum that we regulate to, but realizing that that is a great question because there is additional incremental benefit for all of those more frequent events, and so we want to quantify that for these structures.
Because what ends up happening is we then work with the city for an emergency response to these particular houses. I'm curious how bad it.
Yeah, and one is a commercial property as well, so there's just
It's like one, home.
one home, yep. So moving downstream, west of Whitebear Avenue, we looked at a suite of alternatives here as well. The first alternative we looked at, there's two homes, kind of in an isolated low area of the wetland on the north side, where we recommend constructing berms in the backyards of those homes and then implementing a storm sewer outlet to help drain that low area. So that's the first alternative. It's a little bit independent of a lot of the other alternatives, so really great bang for the buck without sort of a sequencing component behind it. The second alternative we looked at is the County Road C culvert replacement, which is also recommended, which is upsizing that culvert, which is a current 42-inch round culvert, to a box culvert to improve conveyance and help drain that wetland a little bit faster when these larger storms come in and fill it up and start impacting structures. And then the third alternative that we have shown on the screen here is protecting the apartment complex on the south side of the wetland with a berm, and then also adding a weir on the upstream of County Road C. And I have asterisks on this alternative because this alternative isn't necessarily required if we don't implement one more alternative downstream that I'll jump to in a second. So we'll come back to that discussion, but I just wanted to show the alternatives here on the screen visually. Yes.
Before we go to further north, I'm curious, the berm alternative, do we have far enough understanding what that shunting of water from that little lobe of the wetland might do to that part of the wetland?
That's a good question. We have just proposed an outlet at the elevation of what the homes are being impacted at. So we're not draining the wetland per se and impacting sort of the hydrology of it. That's a good thing that we'll note for final design is, and will be part of probably permitting for that project, is making sure we don't have any wetland impacts by draining it too low or preventing water from getting into it with the berms. So yeah, good point. Something we'll look at in the next step.
Can I
move forward with that?
Can I make an assumption that that means it's gonna be a one-way culvert design?
Yes, with a backflow preventer. Yep.
And those berms are also on Ramsey County property, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Right,
Ramsey
so
County Parks.
They benefit the homes, but they're not on their private.
Yep. Exactly.
Making sure that I'm recalling berms correctly, we do and we will plant those nicely, is that correct? Yeah, I mean, obviously we'll talk more about that as we go. I just wanted to make sure that that's staying.
Right, yep.
So you can see the results from our modeling here. We're reducing the flood elevation in the wetland by at least 0.4 feet and protecting all of the structures on the south side in combination with that berm around the wetland complex, for the apartment complex. And then we're reducing the flood elevation behind those two homes by 2 feet and protecting those structures as well. So moving further north and where some of the discussion lands around those optional projects, as part of trying to meet rate control for the 100-year, we don't need this concept that I have shown, which is a berm across the wetland north of County Road C. However, as part of our analysis of these projects, we wanted to look at what would it take to meet rate control for not only the 100-year, but also the 10 and the 2-year, as per the stormwater rule requires. And so to meet those rate control events, we would have to install a berm and a culvert in this wetland on Ramsey County Parks property to reduce the flow rate and make sure that we're matching existing conditions downstream into Markham Pond and into Coleman Basin, as well as not increasing any flood elevations downstream either. And so the asterisk that I alluded to is without this berm, we wouldn't need the weir on the upstream side of County Road C or the berm around the apartment complex. Where if that's the case, we still meet the 100-year rate control, but we would be exceeding the 10-year and 2-year rate control. And so.
Can you say that again?
Yes, yep, so.
Make that connection in the.
Yeah, so without this berm that I have shown in place, if all of the projects are implemented, we protect all of the structures that we have shown already, and we reduce the 100-year discharge below existing conditions, just the way that the timing and the hydraulics work, and the storage that we're adding and timing of the storm sewer improvements. We're meeting 100-year rate control, but we are not meeting 10 and 2-year rate control. And so to meet 10 and 2-year, we would need to install this berm that I have shown. And the other, because by installing this berm, then we start to back up some of our, some of our improvements that we had seen. And so, yeah. So it's kind of a compromise between all of the other improvements and meeting rules there. Yeah.
So one more clarification. This berm would not provide enough storage such that it would, how do I say this, reduce the need for upstream projects?
Correct. Yep, yeah, the profile of Coleman Creek through here and the height of this berm and the size of the culvert that we need to meet rate control backs up the water south of County Road C, and so we need some of those implementation measures like the berm around the apartment complex to help offset that backing up of water that we're seeing with this berm specifically.
There's a fair amount of elevation change from County Road C to where you're proposing that berm. There.
Yeah, there's a lot of water moving through there, so
it is a fairly defined channel.
Going back as it pertains to those other two homes that we believe we can't get the flow needed under White Bear Lakes. Is that considering this berm here? Does that play a role in the choices that we have that we can't help these other two residential, one. What was the assumption made when you did the assessment for the White Bear Lake culvert?
So we didn't have this berm in place, and we were exceeding the 100-year and the 10-year and the 2-year by significant amounts.
Okay, and really the installation of that berm doesn't actually help the conveyance that we would need because of,
Right, it would kind of trap water
That's
in the wetland complex.
So that would
west
actually-
of White Bear, yeah,
Thank
make things worse there.
That's what I just wanted to double check.
Yep.
One more question before we go further. I should have asked this on the previous data public. Just thinking, in the culvert, which it sounds like that's, that makes a lot of sense. The county wanting to redo that road, and that culvert is probably gonna be a problem now or in the future. But do we know its bottom elevation? I'm interested in seeing that elevation be allowing for an aquatic movement and not necessarily be elevated to maximize some storage.
Right, yep, we're matching the existing invert elevation of that culvert. We're just changing the shape and size of it so that, we're not impacting, normal water.
Would we put any automaticity in that particular culvert?
We wouldn't have to see the benefits that we're seeing here. What we will do is, as a temporary condition, we'll install like a head wall at the upstream end, because We don't have any, if we choose to meet rate control for all of the events, we don't have anything downstream yet. So to ensure that we're not,
Because that would be your first step effectively, given what
Yes.
I've read.
yep, exactly. Yep. No, all good questions.
Until I know you, I think you have it in your next steps, right, to kind of talk through the.
Yes.
options.
Yep, yeah, so I'll flip to this slide, that shows both our sequencing and our cost estimating for each of the projects, so, yeah. Like you alluded to, Val, the first project that we are proposing and moving forward with design on right now is the County Road C culvert. Because of the timing of the county's work in there. And then the second project that may or may not move forward depending on how the results of this discussion shake out is the rate control. It's the 2 and 10-year discharge requirements. And then the third project that we would recommend that really could happen at any time is installing those berms in the backyard of those homes, and then that outlet with the backflow preventer. And then the final project at the most upstream end would be the PCU pond improvements, which are storm sewer and the berm installation on the north side of that pond. So you can see the total estimated opinion of probable costs. We have a pretty big cost range on here just because we're at like a 10% level of design right now is about $1.5 to $2.7 million, which includes all 4 of those projects. But again, if we don't do, for example, the second one or even the third one or fourth one, those would be reduced. So
Just going back to the question I asked earlier, number 2, the installation of all 3, even though theoretically we don't need to do all 3 given the choice. Is that correct? That's all 3 berm.
yeah, yep.
Okay, so the recommendation from BAR would be to consider all 3 berm. For both rate control and the inundation. Is that fair? Am I making that?
I think to the planning part of it, because we've been coordinating and having discussions with the county here, we would start by looking at all of these as part of the next step, but I think there's a discussion in terms of system management. You can achieve reductions in the 100-year to get the benefits here. The question then, when you look at it from a system perspective, is does the change in those more frequent events cause any impact that we want to make sure we mitigate? And so that's where we can come back and have another discussion about what those impacts are for the more frequent events, and then talk about it from a system management perspective on how you'd like to proceed there. And so I think getting ahead and giving the next steps, we would start by scoping out those 4, but then have a discussion about, okay, of those 4, we're going to go ahead with these after having that discussion.
Other questions?
So, yeah, as Brandon alluded to, some of our next steps, topics for future discussion as the report is finalized and as we move into scoping final design for any of these alternatives would be to consider the impacts of protecting for the 100-year, but increasing rates for those lower frequency events. And does that mean not implementing the rate control projects? And then, yeah, we would develop scope summaries for final design of the recommended improvements. And then, like I mentioned at the beginning, we'll be finalizing the project report, sharing that with the cities and incorporating any feedback they might have, and then publishing that as well. So.
I have one subsequent question on, have we engaged, we've engaged the city, which sounds great, they're very accommodating. Have we talked to any of the residents in the area for that particular, or some of these particular changes?
Not as part of this feasibility study.
Which makes some sense, but I was just curious in the future.
Yeah, for all of these with the or maybe even the burn in number 2 around the apartments, all of the other improvements are on public property. So whether or not it's the cities or county public works or county parks, we've been in had conversations with all 4 of those entities as part of the study.
Yeah, in my mind, I'm just thinking if I'm in a residential location there and there's a berm put into place and I don't understand it, or maybe I'm like the this individual who backfilled the wetland, do I think you're actually messing around in my backyard?
Yeah. Yep.
Just trying to understand,
Yeah, we would work with each of those public agencies then.
and then they would do the
through their
outreach.
notification process and, yeah, outreach
Okay.
process.
Thank you. Thanks for enduring all the questions. I don't have any further questions. How about y'all? Perfect, thank you so much.
Okay, of course, yes, happy to present. We'll stop sharing.
Thanks, Tyler.
Mhm.
This isn't your first present here, is it?
No.
For sure it wasn't. Must have been used to you saying online or something. Okay, moving forward to the watershed approach to retrofit project.
Tyler also
That's-
worked on this one.
Yeah, I guess. Do you wanna kick it off or do you want me to?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, great.
You're on a roll.
So, last year as part of the targeted retrofit program, what BAR and district staff worked on is doing an inventory of past retrofit projects that have been implemented and or evaluated at different levels of detail, some just at a desktop level, some at a feasibility level. But we really wanted to get an understanding of where we've looked at potential water quality retrofit projects throughout the district and identify kind of the database that we have, the existing information that we have. And then as part of that, what we wanted to do moving forward is develop a more systematic and strategic approach for finding projects that we can implement as part of the targeted retrofit program. And so you'll see in the scope summary that we've included sort of a flow chart that describes how that process might look. But it does take a more systematic approach. It utilizes a lot of data that we have available to us, either through the district or publicly available. And then it allows us to sort of evaluate everything objectively using data that we know is a priority for identifying potential projects. So whether that's equity areas throughout the district, or whether that's areas where there's extreme flooding, or really prime habitat corridors, we can use all those data sets and intersect them to highlight parcels and create heat maps of where we might implement projects, and use that as a launching point for doing outreach, as Paige does, to property owners to see if they're interested in participating in the retrofit program or in the stewardship grant program. And so as part of this scope, what we would do is we would identify what those layers and information we would use are through workshops with district staff. And then we'd identify different metrics that we would use to score potential parcels based on the intersection of that data and the evaluation that we do at a desktop level. And then from there, we would use those results, those maps, to take a deeper dive into certain areas throughout the district where we do see hotspots of potential projects, areas where projects might have the best impact. And then we would do that deeper dive and develop even further information, whether it's conceptual design or further scoring of what a project might look like, and then select those properties to do targeted outreach to get them on our list for the future. Because in the past few years, and Paige, you can speak more to this, but we've had a healthy list of projects in the backlog, but now we're kind of looking forward to see how we can make a list for the future and help identify projects equitably and maybe more objectively, but also recognizing that some of the best projects are where there are willing partners and people come to the district to want to do things. So that will all get tied into what we're calling the WARP, the watershed assessment of retrofit projects, and we'll pilot that this year for planning for 2025, and then make updates as needed and kind of as we learn through this pilot process. I won't say what our acronym was before WARP, but that's where we landed.
WARP is an improvement.
WARP is an improvement.
We're open to ideas.
I like WARP, that sounds like it's
We had called it the climate resiliency and adaptation.
Prioritization.
Climate.
Strategy.
Oh, yeah, that was
Adaptation.
what I
prioritization.
wanted.
That sounds pretty bureaucratic.
Well,
Technically,
well,
like
think
the acronym.
about the acronym. Yes.
Yeah.
So I just have one question. So I know we updated our vulnerability index. I assume this is aligned to that.
Yep.
Okay, good. Last thing is, would we accelerate any of our planning for the retrofits just because this is a new tool? We might get a see at what the tool prioritizes and maybe have some comments and come back to it. I'm just trying to think proactively as we approach using it this year. Can we move it up a month just to get a sense of where it is so we can say, oh, shoot, that isn't really what we're thinking. Would that be okay to do?
Move it up a month from,
When our typical plan is when we visit the retrofit programs? What is that? That's normally in the fall, isn't it? Or no, it's.
so typically it's through our budgeting process, so you
Yeah.
see stuff in July and August and September, so
Yeah,
kind of
well,
over that, so I think.
Totally get that. Details are like toward the end of the fall is what I was trying to remember. That's all I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah.
I want an opportunity after you try the tool, you pilot the tool, you recommend it for us to give it like a litmus test from a qualitative standpoint. Does this make sense? That's really what I was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep, we
Okay,
can definitely bring that back to the board.
yeah, I'm very happy with the approach.
Paige, anything to add?
No, that was great.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm excited to use it. You know, in the past, it's been me and whoever, you know, now Marcy from Bar going out, and we have kind of our various spreadsheets and a lot of information up here that, yeah, that's where it is. So this will be good to use and keep track of things, you know, even tie into like permit, if we have an idea for a project and if the permit that's coming up, we can see how it's rated on our scoring.
And very much like we talked about earlier, this seems perfect type of thing to publish during it, because you could be engaging the public in these particular areas, finding people who are interested. But just starting awareness campaign earlier rather than later might benefit, I think, but consider that as you walk through. I'm excited. Cool. Thank you. Good delegation skills.
You know, I came all this way.
It wasn't a roll.
Yeah.
Administrative report, Tina.
Yes, meetings attended, it was a busy month, a little bit extra long one as well. Looking at upcoming meetings, I just wanted to point out a few things. We have the March board meeting, which is the same day as the legislative event, that's information is coming up in the packet as well. Waterfest is, you know, really just right around the corner, so mark your calendars for June 1st. And then the Minnesota Watershed Summer Tour, so that's something that we are hosting, our WMWD, along with Capital Region Watershed District. So we'll be bringing, you know, it's an event that Minnesota Watersheds hosts that brings in the board members and staff from all over the state. So we'll get to showcase our projects. So Paige and I will be leading that up from our point of view, and Anna Lyria from Capital Region will be there. And so we're gonna be talking about tour sites. So if there's anything in particular you think would be a really great tour site, let us know and we'll consider that on the list. We have a long list, so we're gonna have to pare it down, but we're looking forward to hosting the Minnesota Watersheds. Mark your calendars for that as well. That is like a Tuesday, Wednesday, I believe. Yeah, the tour will be all day on Wednesday, and Tuesday is some educational sessions.
Did we get any additional clarity on what's the agenda is outside of just big blocks of time for the legislative event?
So just as it states there, I mean, that's what more, I guess, what questions do you have about?
On for example, on the caucus meetings, or anything that needs to be, there's no decisions being made in this legislative event.
No, and I don't know why they call it regional caucus meetings. It's more of a casual, so that's during the reception, and I think they're just gonna have opportunities for caucus members to gather. There's no decisions or any voting that happens during.
That's what raised my red flag, is regional caucus meeting. What are you doing?
Yeah. Okay. So You'll see the briefing, everything else is done by 5. If you're okay, missing the reception, then I think we could hold our board meeting at the same regular time. If you're interested in attending the reception, then we should.
Is anyone interested in attending the reception? Okay. I would like to attend one of these pieces, but not the reception. So I
If
don't
you
think we
are
would be-
interested in attending other parts besides the reception, we will still need to register, so you'll need to let me know.
I will talk to you after.
Okay. So if anyone else is interested. Staffing update, I mentioned in there that we are, posted for a grant program specialist, so that'll do some of the BMP maintenance specialist work as well as the grant, stewardship grant program items that Paige currently does. She's pretty loaded with project management, watershed project management, so, that was the intent of that BMP inspection or maintenance specialist, was that they would take on those grant admin tasks. So we're looking forward to seeing what kind of applications we get. That is ongoing. And then next month is our annual meeting. So this is just a reminder, if by chance you are not able to attend, please let me know so I can be aware of that. And then our newly appointed board member from Washington County, Stephanie Wong, will be attending as well. I am working on some onboarding appointments with her over the next couple of weeks. And she's been to a few meetings virtually, and she's also been very involved in our watershed for a number of years, so.
Pam has some big shoes to fill, but
Yeah.
Stephanie is very well
It was
qualified.
a good appointment.
Well, good, good to hear.
As I mentioned in there, at the next meeting, and Tracy mentioned it too, every other year, every 2 years, we're required to post public notice for our engineer, attorney, accountant, bank, and news. Well,
Auditors.
those 3: auditor, attorney, engineer, and accountant. So we'll receive those proposals, and you'll see those next month to make decisions on those. And you also elect your officers for the next year, which are listed there as well. Which can maybe roll into the governance document. I put a photocopy at your desk. We photocopy, but I did email it to you.
Yeah, so you just got it.
I know I just
Yeah.
emailed it to you this afternoon, so. So I don't know if you've had much of a chance to take a look, but we can take any comments now, or if we want to save that for next month, we can.
I was actually thinking it might be a nice discussion for next month.
Yeah.
So it gets an opportunity for people to read it.
This, I'm gonna take.
Is it fair to send it to Stephanie prior?
I was planning to, yeah. I was gonna include it in some of our discussions as a draft. Just for
Perfect.
her to be aware of it as well. Yep.
Is the remainder of the board comfortable putting this as a board discussion topic next time?
That's actually what I would prefer.
Yeah,
I probably
I
would have it as
skimmed
an
it.
action item, so that we can have some approval and.
As long as that's, I'm very happy with, it needs to be discussed during either the action or
Yeah.
discussions. I'm happy with both.
Yeah. Okay. Alright.
I do have a question about Waterfest. Now that Lauren has her drone license, is there any opportunity to fit that somewhere into the Waterfest festivities?
I will ask her. I don't know for certain yet how she's planning to use that, but I would anticipate, although she did say she was a little nervous about flying it around so many people.
Yeah, because I just imagine
We'll
this
see.
wonderful look over and.
We'll see how much practice she has ahead of that, but
I'd be afraid flying it over a lake.
yeah.
I don't know if St. Paul has the same thing, but Ramsey County, we have to get a permit to do that in
Yeah.
our parks.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
just be
Very
aware.
valid.
Yeah, valid point. I'm sure that was part of her training too, was all the permits and requirements that come with it. So, yeah, good question.
Well, the reason I asked, I was talking to somebody about this particular board, and it's just wonderful to be part of a board that is so innovative doing these types of things. And this, what better way to demonstrate it than to have a flyover, preferably not injure anybody.
Yeah. Yes, preferably.
On the action log, the only thing just to highlight, and this is something Tina and I talked about, the land acquisition
Yeah.
and use policy, that will most likely come next month as well.
Yep.
Just to be clear.
Yes, and Paul is planning to provide some information on the shoreline condition assessment and planning along with his team in March as well.
And we'll load balance.
Full meeting.
Full meeting.
We'll load balance between March and April. There's some that are substance before that, but
Yeah.
yes. Or the president will have the opportunity.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tina.
Yeah.
Any further questions for Tina? Very busy. Okay. Wonderful. So moving forward to project and program statuses. Like we had a couple times ago, I'm just gonna walk through A, B, C, not like individually, but my first question starts at C. Does anybody have a question on A and B? Okay, so on the Ames Lake flood area reduction, we are meeting with the HRA in early February. I was kind of hoping that you all might have already done that. If not, that's okay. I just was curious.
Yes, sorry. I was waiting if that was it.
Yeah, that's it, man.
We did meet with the city of St. Paul and the HRA in January. We presented the concepts for the flood risk reduction projects at their sites. We had met with both of them before we started the feasibility study and got initial approval that they were interested in using those sites as for flood risk reduction. After that meeting, they told us they needed to go back to the HRA board and get basically final approval for us before we started any type of final design. They've had some turnover, and the feedback that we received from the HRA was at their January board meeting, they took a step back and realized that they needed to develop a strategy for all of their parcels in both our watershed district, but also Cap Region Watershed District. And so the email correspondence with them is that they are working through that. They may be reaching out to us for this parcel, other parcels in the area, looking for input on what constraints there might be for them to develop those vacant parcels, or if there's other opportunities. And then for this parcel in particular, they're waiting to get through that strategy discussion before providing that direction to us. The tentative schedule, again, we don't know how that will play out on their end, but their tentative schedule is they were thinking that it would be towards the end of March when they would be able to give us the go ahead. And so the status on that one really is the feasibility design is done, the concepts have been shared, the coordination is done. We're holding off on the final memo because we want to make sure the recommendation aligns with the city, with the property owner.
Okay.
So we're waiting on them to finish the process.
Very cool. Okay, thank you. Any questions on D? Or I'm jumping to E next. So it's a fairly long write-up. I know that there's been a lot of interest in it the last couple of board meetings, so I do appreciate the extra detail and the back and forth. The new bit of information that I was waiting to hear about is how that meeting with Atwell went, and from reading this particular summary, I'm gathering they did not agree with it. Is that a fair assumption, or could you provide additional information?
Yes, so we did meet with Atwell. Atwell was the engineering consultant that North Star Estates Property Management selected to review really revisions to their properties. And so we met with a group from Atwell and the property management company for North Star Estates. We went through and presented the reason for the project. We made it clear what the flood risk was for their site. They knew that it frequently flooded. They've reached out to us in the past before. We also made it clear that the watershed district was looking to essentially fund the project, design, build, construct, manage construction. And we told them that we'd have a contractor on site. We would be open to them if they had other improvements that they wanted to add on. We would help facilitate those and cost share. And at the end of that discussion, they said, thank you. This is something we're gonna have to go back and discuss internally. We heard back from them in about a week, and their response was, we're not interested in a project at this time. So what we have done following that discussion is we've reached out to the City of Little Canada, because the driver for the improvements within North Star Estates was to improve the ring road, the access road, so that the water depths on the road would be lower than the FEMA recommendation to allow emergency responders to access residences during a flood event. Now with both St. Paul Regional Water and North Star Estates providing feedback that they're no longer interested in the project, we're going back to the City of Little Canada. We're meeting with them coming up here in February to tell them, give them the update on the conversations. There are a few components that were planned within the City of Little Canada right of way. The City of Little Canada has remained supportive of all of this throughout. The discussion of Little Canada is to go over, if we do the projects that are within Little Canada right of way, what does that mean in terms of changes to flood levels within North Star Estates and within near the Owasso Basin area? What does that mean to emergency responders? And where that discussion ends up going is there a benefit or a need to implement those small pieces right away, because that allows easier access for emergency responders? Or do those smaller pieces not move the needle in a meaningful way in terms of how emergency responders would access residents? And then we continue to work with Little Canada for a more regional solution that would be, we've been working with them on this for a number of years. So that would, extend it, essentially push this off of the final design schedule and move this into more back into the planning coordination with the city. So that meeting we're looking to get scheduled in February, and then feedback from their emergency responders within the city. We would follow up with them after that discussion and define that path forward.
As you talk with the City of Little Canada, is there any need to maybe talk to some of those residents in North Star Estates? I mean, the decisions being made are by the property owners, but the ones who are impacted, unfortunately, are the tenants. And I know that their risk understanding is different than others. So maybe it's best to talk to Little Canada about how to engage public in this particular time.
That's a great, it's a great comment. It's a comment that we started to have at the Public Works Forum, where the cities were sharing examples of how each city reached out to different residents and shared this information. And you're spot on with the comment here, in that we are have been having discussions with a management company. And so we don't know what information has been shared with their tenants.
So last time this area flooded, it was bad. So that's what I'm just reacting.
Yeah, and that was a comment I had when we had this discussion with the City of Little Canada. It's their residents too, and it's their emergency responders, as Brandon was mentioning. So I don't know if the city has any different ways of approaching the situation as well with the landowner.
Short of making a motion to it, it's more of like, I would really encourage y'all to and representatives to find ways to outreach to somebody.
Yeah.
That is my bias. I don't know what others feel, but that's where I was at. And I see you have a thought. So.
I have a concern, but it's premature. So I'll table my concern for now.
Thank you. Yeah, so thank you for the long write up. I'd be interested to see how that goes. Okay, I don't have any other comments until item H in research programs. Anybody else? This is just a general comments on H itself. I don't have any questions. I understand that was what happens. Just want to make sure that we've captured some sort of lessons learned in this particular instance, because it is an investment to do these types of studies. And so if we get value out of it. I appreciate the play on the return on investment, but the underlying objective and outcome, unfortunately, we can't hit. So I just want to make sure we do a lessons learned. That would be great. And then any other questions? I don't think I have any questions until S, the CIP maintenance. On the CIP maintenance, I do know that we're having some very interesting weather this winter. I think we all are feeling that. I'm not overly concerned, but I assume in subsequent markups, you'll highlight when we're gonna be at some risk from a scheduling standpoint, knowing where the land is.
Yep.
Okay, we don't have pressure on schedule now, but I assume probably if this weather continues this way.
We got a pretty good start on basically the one pond that we were gonna do, and a lot of the stuff we needed to wait till spring anyways with the bolt ramps and a couple other things, so we're still in pretty good shape.
Thank you, Dave. I don't have any other questions until W with the communications. Anyone? I would love to see the community survey.
Okay.
Just out of interest, both as a constituent, but also as just out of curiosity.
Did anybody receive a text message?
I have not. That's what.
Did go out today. We had somebody knock on the door and said they received it. Interesting, came to our building. But yes, I will ask Lauren to provide that.
That would be great. Thank you. Would you like to, would it be okay just to forward the survey to the board? I think
Yeah,
that
I'll
would
have
be-
it in the packet.
I do have a question, move this back just slightly, but item Q. That's the cottage place wetland regeneration, and it was highlighted in the packet that Bar worked toward refining the plan and also getting feedback from the church and the city, and I'm just curious the level of feedback and whether or not they seem to be excited, supportive.
Yeah, so the city of Shoreview is definitely supportive. The concept plan was reviewed by their Parks and, I'm gonna get the name wrong, I think it's their Parks and Rec Committee, it's the Parks and Trails Committee, but so one of those. And when we had our neighborhood meeting in November, that concept was presented to the residents, and there was a connector trail proposed as well as a loop trail around the wetland. We received a lot of negative comments about the loop trail. So both that was presented to the Parks and Rec Committee as well as removing that loop trail and just having a connector trail from Cottage Place to Vivian Avenue. So the committee decided, let's remove that loop trail if that's giving residents concern, and just keep that paved trail as kind of a connector to some of the other parks in the area. And that was presented to the Shoreview City Council on Monday night, and they voted to approve it. They were excited about it. They appreciate the partnership. And, you know, the funding that we're putting in to restore the wetlands. So they voted to approve that. We have a memorandum of understanding with them for the project, so they approved that. And then that was shared with St. Odelia's Catholic Church, and they have their property management committee meets the end of the month. So the city manager and I will be at that meeting to present the project to them, and then they'll vote to move forward with that or not, because, so they need to have we need their input, because the trail would actually be on St. Odelia's property. It'll be a city managed trail, but they'll have an easement then, but it is mostly on St. Odelia's property.
Are they still considering parks and areas of play in that particular area?
Is it from St. Odelia's?
Well, so the loop area, I think there was some brainstorming occurring when we did the tour where they talked about maybe areas of play for the public, but I don't remember if they finalized any of those.
Yeah, I think we're gonna do like more of a lookout type area, but probably not. I don't think it'll be area of play in there.
Yeah, I didn't know how best to say it because we didn't talk about park, but we did talk about like some really cool things that it could, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
So was the loop trail just gone? Okay. Not-
It makes me sad inside as an inner child, such a walker.
Yeah, yes.
There's just differing opinions by neighbors close by, neighbors
see.
that come as an amenity. I know sometimes the Parks and Trails Committee has a differing opinion than the Parks and Rec Committee in Shoreview. They really like to see expanded trails, expanded use of public space. And sometimes the loudest voices being the neighbors overrule the majority, and I have a problem with that.
Understood.
I think with this one, they may have pushed it more, but it's not going to be considered a city park. So then they didn't do that, but they are excited to have that other connector trail there.
Thank you for bringing us back to that, Mark. Any further questions on the project status? Okay, so manager comments in next month's meeting. Yes, next month's meeting is going to be a fairly packed agenda. We'll make sure that we balance that as well as possible. I really just kind of wanted to end the meeting, if you're comfortable with it, the same way we started, and just honestly, Pam, you've, like Larry had said, and I'm going to say it equally, you've been a mentor. It's been wonderful to actually engage with you on honestly everything, even the lively discussions, which are fun. We always found a place of common ground, which I really enjoyed. And your undying dedication to community and equity has just been inspirational. So I did want to, like I said, end the meeting the same way we started. Thank you. And hopefully we'll see you around.
Yeah.
We all know where the U is.
I swear though, when I retire, I'm seriously gonna maybe come back and apply to be an intern here or something.
Can I revise my comments? I don't.
Maybe some old lady, it would be this old lady coming back to volunteer. or something.
Be a water severity,
Yeah.
things.
No, I really wanna help Dave.
Yeah, Dave, the other.
Your intern.
Yeah. Thumbs up, Dave. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. You will be missed, Pam. So with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. There you go.
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
I
I'll
saw.
miss you all.